Hello to you, and welcome to AV123. In this episode, we'll be chatting to Bryan Barletta of Sounds Profitable about the business of podcasting, what they do, how they do it, and why that matters. So if podcasting is your thing, then we suggest you stay right where you are and don't go anywhere else, okay? Bryan Barletta of Sounds Profitable, thank you so much for your time and willingness to tell us all about the business of podcasting.
Thanks for having me.
So let me cut right to the chase. Sounds Profitable, as an endeavor, has set itself the primary goal of educating and empowering the podcasting industry on all levels. You are committed, you say on your website, to setting the course for the future of the audio business. Now that's a very bold statement. So what does it mean? And how the hell are you guys going to do it?
Yeah, it's our goal with all of this is we believe that podcasting is a really killer channel. It's has fantastic audience. We continue to put research out on all of that, and it pulls people in ways that audio can only pull people in, and it's meeting people in a digital era. And so we believe that through Tom and I, and our title at our company is partner, and through the 175 and growing partner companies that we work with, that we are the right people to help highlight this industry and help grow it both through listenership and monetization. And so by being able to pull everybody together in such an early stage industry, we're 20 years into it and still can be considered early stage because of the size and the revenue from it, but we're able to get people and peers to talk together, and we're able to get the platforms to interact with us, and we're able to really focus on the message of why podcasting. And by doing that and listening to all of these people, we're able to grow it, not just for us or for our partners, but for literally every single person interested in being a podcast listener, to a hobbyist, to getting a career in it, whether it's behind the mic or in front of the mic. We're just committed to it. We love it. We're listeners and creators ourselves.
You know, a friend of mine who's been in commercial radio for 25 years told me the other day that she thinks podcasting will eventually replace traditional radio. How much truth is there in that statement, do you think?
I think we're in an interesting time where we can compare broadcast television and connected television, right? Like, or streaming services and on-demand services. We're not completely away from day and date style watching or consumption, right? There's, I think today, as we're recording, the Fallout, a video game TV show, launches on Amazon, but it's not until tonight, right? It's not that at midnight or whatever local time that it was available on Amazon Prime. They still held it to a certain time. So if streaming TV, if connected TV, if all of these on-demand services are still held accountable to that, there's still that tune-in aspect that's really attractive. And that's still why people watch broadcast television. They still tune in for certain shows and things like that.
So do you think the same applies to radio?
I think so. I mean, I think that, I think in the US, we're a little bit behind on radio compared to globally. I mean, like the digital signals and radio are really interesting and make it a little bit easier for someone to have radio on their phone and bring it with them and not be reliant on starting listening on your phone and then moving to listening in your car in a separate device, basically, and then having to exit back and find out where you were. I think radio still has that value on, especially with the news, especially with commute times and all of that. It still has a hold on people. My favorite thing is that when the people are into digital audio, every now and then, some of them will be like, have you heard about advertising on broadcast radio? And it's like, yeah, it's been a thing for a little bit now. It seems to still work pretty okay. It might at some point, but I still think there's a place for it.
Well, on that note, and from your perspective, what strategies are most effective for podcasters to increase listener engagement and retention, especially in a market that's becoming increasingly saturated because everybody seems to want a piece of Mama's podcasting pie? What's it going to take for podcasters to succeed?
I think success is really an interesting question. I mean, like our newsletter is about 9,000 people that read it or that receive it every day. I'd say about 50% of them that's our unique open rate. So more than half of them for 6 issues a week. That's what we get for readership there. But our podcast itself is only about 200 to 300 downloads per episode. So it's really creating that habit. The disparity between that is huge. But to me, those people letting us in their ear, like every now and then I'm like, maybe it's okay if we miss the audio for today, right? We get an email about it. Someone sends me a text message. Like I disrupted their flow. So I think understanding what success is and leaning into it and understanding that success might not be the end solution. Podcasting might not be your only channel or your strongest channel, but defining that is the first step of it. Retention, like you said, is I think even more key than growth most of the time, because if you can grow your show, whether it's listenership or traffic, retaining them is the most important part of it, right? How do you get them in that loop? How do you create that habit for them? Whether you're releasing every summer for something for people to listen to over spring break, or you're a daily show or a weekly show or a monthly show, how do you get them to make time for you? And then from that retention, engaging with them and understanding where they are, who you're appealing to, and finding out not only where to find that group in a bigger scale and getting in front of them. And that can be paid advertising, that can be cross promos on other podcasts, that can be buying ads in newsletters, or going to live events with a QR code on your t-shirt, depending on what your niche is and all this stuff. But by understanding who your audience is, you can understand not only the audience, that those people you're looking for, but the people adjacent to them.
Tell me something, Bryan. How would Sounds Profitable define success in podcasting?
Oh, that's hard. Let's put it in two categories. Let's talk about hobby and professional. Look, every now and then I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we'll record audio, right? Like their voices are so cute and they're not going to be like this forever. So for me to be able to have a conversation with them or get them to say something funny and record that, I don't know if I've ever put it on an RSS feed, but they call it a podcast. I call it a podcast, and it's for us, right? That's a hobbyist. I'm not going to quit my job to go do that professionally. I don't know. I think I kind of do that, I guess, already. But to me, that as long as you love it, as long as you enjoy it, related to journaling, painting, creating something, if it makes you happy, that's success. Nobody has to listen to it but you. You can delete it when you're done if it makes you happy, just to have created something. That's success on the hobbyist side. On the professional side, I think it's tough, right? I think success can be identifying that podcasting can be a path for you to work professionally, whether it is in front of the mic, behind the mic, whether it's getting a job at a company that does stuff in podcasting, and therefore your podcast gets to be part of what you do, right? Can you bring it along as a branded solution? Is it just a side project that gives you more credibility in that space? There's all the options there. But for a handful of people, it can become its own independent thing. And so I think that people need to define success individually for them. I think podcasting probably isn't the path it was 20 years ago, where you could just keep talking and eventually quit your job. But I think that maybe it can make you a little bit more money, or maybe it can get you talking to 100, 200 people per episode, which when you think about it, I've spoken at conferences with 20 people in the seats in front of me. To have 100 or 200 people is absolutely a home run. And to have them consistently listening to you, I don't know. I mean, to me, that's success. There are 200 to 300 people per episode that listen to what we have to say, give us minutes of their time instead of scrolling through a newsletter. You can't replace that.
Now, in your view, what are the most promising developments in podcast monetization, and how do you see these evolving over the next few years? Any key trends, maybe?
Yeah, I think we're back into the mindset that podcasting has a strong influencer appeal to it. Even just taking influence, right? Not influencer necessarily like the idea of like that YouTube celebrity or Twitch celebrity, all of that, but like just think about the influence aspect. And what it's really shown me is that there are people who identify as podcasters because it's a very unified and a structured way to exert influence. But they do more than that. There are people that have killer newsletters and YouTube, and their podcast is 1/10 the size of either of those, but they identify as a podcaster because it is something that you can explain easier and is more appealing to talk about. That right there, that's like a really strong way for them to say, like, I'm selling what I'm doing. Right? They don't have to just sell podcast ads on like a cost per 1,000 basis. They don't have to sell sponsorships or complete takeovers of just their podcasts or just their video or just their social media or newsletter. They can sell the package. You're buying me. I'm interested in your brand. I'd like to be considered as a representative of your brand. I want to promote it to people. Here's what it costs for me on all of my channels to be about your brand. And I think that that's allowed a lot of creators to explore non-standard models. Now that's incredibly hard because you have to understand the business side. You have to be the product has to be appealing. You have to figure out how to reach out to them. But that I think is becoming more and more attainable for those smaller creators, because I would caution on the other side. I mean, if you just put ads in your podcast, the smaller you are, the less high dollar amount, the less likely it's going to be an announcer read ad and or a host read ad. It more likely be an announcer read ad. At the end of the day, I mean, 100 downloads is not going to make you very much money through ads, even if you stuffed it with ads, and then you risk alienating your audience. So while there is options there, that's like 1 or 2 coffees a month money sometimes. And so that gap is in creative thinking. That gap is focusing on growth. And in the same way, if somebody told me they were going to start a business or a store, but they weren't going to invest any money in it, and they were just going to like put it out there and hope for the best, I'd laugh at them at that, right? Or I don't think I'd be that mean, but I would expect them not to succeed. The same thing happens for a podcast. If you want to make money off of it, you need to grow it. And sometimes the growth has to come before the monetization options. But yeah, there's standard ads. There's the opportunity to knock on the door of any brand you can get an attention of and tell them why they should work with you as ads or something bigger. Cost per acquisition is starting to come back more and more, which has been really attractive. The idea of that I'm going to do as many ad reads as I want because I'm passionate about it, but the sale dictates how much I earn off of it. We're going to see more opportunity, but I think what's really cool is the podcasting will be the place where a lot of these influencer-based opportunities become more formatted and more structured, and the podcast-based opportunities expand even further.
Bryan, considering your expertise in ad tech, how do you believe advancements in technology will change the way podcasts are made and distributed? If AI plays a role, for example, what sort of role do you foresee?
Yeah, on the tech that we've been using in the infrastructure side for podcasting, I feel like we've kind of been asleep at the wheel for a little bit. I think we had some big acquisitions. We were post-COVID. We had some pricing and number changes and just a lot of stuff that we needed to figure out, but we didn't have a lot of innovation. But that's all starting to change now. And it's really clear that companies that were doing stuff quietly, the longer term projects, and are now starting to talk about them. And I think they're going to pull a lot of attention and a lot of people moving over to use their products. It's got me very excited. AI is something that's so funny. I gave the example the other day, like I was 14 years old and I got a job at McDonald's so I could buy a Nokia phone, like one of the first ones they had out. I didn't have anybody to call, but like technology was so much a part of my life that like I needed this device. And so when I look at AI today, to say I don't get it, like to generalize it like that, like is it makes me feel bad. And I spend a lot of time trying to dig into it. But I think today a lot of people are thinking about how AI can do creative things and artistic things. And that's not what I want, right? Like I want the mundane things to be able to be handled by AI so that I can go do the creative things, right? Like I don't need AI to play guitar for me. I need AI to answer all my emails so I can go learn to play guitar. So I think what we saw first was a real big jump from like engineering type stuff all the way to the final output. We're seeing some synthetic voice stuff, which is interesting there, but people immediately jump into a full podcast done with that synthetic voice and done with that. And cool, that's great. If your perfect skill set is growing and marketing a podcast, but you couldn't build the content or get the right voice to save your life, maybe you just found your perfect opportunity, though I doubt it. But I think we're going to see like a return to the focus on how can I utilize AI to quickly sort everything into red, green, and yellow, and then be able to know I throw away red, and maybe once a month or once a quarter, I revisit the red to make sure it didn't throw anything wrong. Yellow is the things I know will take a little bit of time, so I'll put it to the back of the stack, and green are the things I can eyeball quickly and approve, and then I can move on to the next thing, right? We're seeing AI tools used in editing with things like Descript and Adobe to remove ums and ahs, and that is really exciting to me. I mean, the text-based editing capabilities, I have no editing skills, but I played around with Descript and it made me feel like I could do this. Is there a level between what I can do with that and what a professional engineer can do? Absolutely. but maybe when you're starting, you don't need to know Pro Tools. So I think if we think about it as creative output, that's the wrong direction. I think for some very specific use cases, it could be there, but I wouldn't hold my breath on it. Like, I'm not going to be buying any AI art anytime soon. But on the process side, I think it can free people up to be more critical thinkers and to do the more enjoyable stuff, right? Really just kind of clear the mundane off their plate.
Now, Bryan, data privacy is becoming a thing, and with growing concerns and regulations around it. How do you see the landscape of podcast advertising changing, and what steps can creators take to navigate these challenges?
I think creators are in the hardest point possible, right? Because every app I install on my phone or my iPhone will ask me, like, it'll give me the button to say like approve or ask app not to track. But Spotify, I guess Spotify does it, but like Apple Podcasts doesn't do it, right? Like, and so when I play a podcast, the assumption for most listeners is going to be that like nothing personal is being sent. Now, my personal belief is that the IP address that you're connecting for, and to get super nerdy, like IPv4, the specific subset that is mostly being received by podcasting, is really general. I mean, you can tell my house that this is the object that is my house. Can't always get to my postal address for it, but you could get the general area of it. But you know the things that are connecting through that household there, that has been deemed as personal information. And that's sent in the request to get the download, right? To get the episode. We're navigating a lot of this because I believe that Spotify and Apple should be like sending the flag. We do have the approval for you to use the IP, or we don't there. The hosting platform should be ingesting that and, you know, storing it appropriately on that end. They should be making calls to all the tracking solutions and the advertising augments with that knowledge in mind. Can I augment this specifically or just generally? And then moving into the data retention policy, I think that those are all things that podcasting, it's not perfect on. And it's things that we're going to start to focus on more and more as privacy becomes front and center. But what I'll say is that like a website has more holes than that, right? A mobile app and there are other areas that have more holes. And since podcast advertising in 2022 failed to hit $2 billion, I don't think we've finished the 2023 numbers are not out yet. Those will be out very shortly. I think next month we'll start to see them. YouTube is like 16 times the size of us advertising on its own. Maybe some of these things need to be figured out by bigger industries at this point. And then we can inherit there. Or maybe we can continue to be the underdog that makes the hard decision earlier so that we can get ahead of things. But what I'll say is the IP address is really the only thing that's exposed. It's exposed in every single thing you do. And in podcasting, we can't even tell that you listened to an episode. We can tell that you downloaded it. We can't tell that you got an ad impression. We can tell that the portion of the episode with an ad in it was downloaded. So I think privacy is honestly in a really good spot there, but that doesn't mean that all of the privacy regulation out there, that doesn't mean that podcasting is in line with where it's all going yet.
Now, in your view, as someone deeply embedded in the podcasting industry, what are your predictions for the evolution of podcast content in the coming years, and what niches or formats are going to grow in popularity, do you think?
That's a tough one. My tastes are terrible. I don't know who's popular or cool anymore. I'm starting to realize that as my kids get older and I get older. Part of me wonders if podcasting is going to make it easier to fragment that, right? Like, I listen to some podcasts that I'm never going to be able to convince other people to listen to, right? They appeal to me for a very specific reason. And they're never going to be a chart topper. But for me, like there's a few video game podcasts that I really like, and I just like how the hosts interact, or board game podcasts or things like that. And I'm looking for those times when I got to spend more time with my friends and hear these people interact. Makes me feel that way. And sometimes I'll do Patreon for them and all that, but they're never going to be a top 100 anything, right? Like I don't care what category you put them in. So I think there's always going to be those core podcasts that rise to the top. But I think that as we continue to see the ability and the ease for people to create interesting content, you're going to see as you get past 3, 4, 5, 6, the top podcast per individual, you're going to start seeing some obscure stuff. You're going to see some stuff that means something to them. And those ones I think are the more interesting ones to me. How we figure out how those people survive and thrive. Is it a exclusive membership community or live events? Because again, 100 to 200, 300 people listening to your podcast, if they're all relatively in the same area, or if you're able to do a live recording at an event that they were all going to gravitate towards anyways, because of the bigger area that your podcast is within, you can sell out a theater pretty easily. Yeah. So that interests me way more than who's the next Joe Rogan or Call Her Daddy or anything like that. Do I miss when everybody would walk in the morning and be like, did you listen to Serial? Yeah. But I wonder if we've moved away from that in every bit of content. I wonder if we're going to have less and less as individuals to talk about because our tastes immediately split off in different directions because of how many options we have.
Because you're on the bleeding edge of podcasting, Bryan, what innovative tools or platforms have you come across that'll improve listener engagement or even audio quality?
For listener engagement, I think it's easy to hate on Spotify. I think that a lot of people default to that. I think, you can look at how much money they spend on shows you might not like, or how they've changed how each of their products work, or the people they've laid off. And I think that that's easy to think like that and miss out on all the neat things there. But if you buy in, if you sign up for their newsletter, if you host with them, or you even list your podcast on them, today you have the ability to do polls to your listeners. You have the ability to do companion banners and ads, and buy ads for your podcast on other podcasts at a reduced rate in that format is something they launched there. So I really think that some of the more innovative tools for independent creators are coming out of the hosting, or not the hosting platforms, the public, the apps, which means that we need to see a little bit more out of Amazon and Apple, but we should expect similar things for YouTube, especially with how they're focusing on podcasting and making more room for it. On the improving audio quality, honestly, I think that there's a lot of tried and true solutions. I think Wondercraft is an AI tool that I found very interesting that can help you build a script for an overall podcast from different articles. It can help you write ad copy and things like that. And so the areas where you're second guessing yourself, it's got a voice and a mindset for podcasting. You can add your own spin to it, but even if it just helps you skip a few steps, for audio quality, AI is really, there's a lot of people really focusing on it. I think my understanding is that there's some Dolby related products, Dolby, because they're doing their, their spatial audio and all those things. And Google has their own open spatial audio format. We're going to see a lot of innovation around that, tools that make that pretty easy. Heck, a physical product, which is amazing to talk about an indie physical product in this day, but we work with a company called No Mono, which is a 4-person Bluetooth lav microphone with a central hub to it that has 8 microphones on it that on its own could be used to collect spatial audio. But also if we were talking in person and there was a waterfall next to us, that 8 microphone thing collects the background noise and helps them remove it from each of our individual microphones so that it can be more clear, right? So that your quality is better. So, I think we're seeing consumerized versions of technology that used to be professional only, and you see this in Shure's product line and elsewhere there too. So yeah, it's a great time to be buying and exploring tech and products on the creator side, because I think that people are starting to dig in more and realize how technology can really improve that process and audio quality.
Bryan Barletta of Sounds Profitable, thank you very much for joining us on AV123.